everybody. Welcome to Mistick's MMOs. I am your host, Mistick Raven. Alright, today I am going to bring you a build that is red hot. It is so hot that I was kind of impressed with the play style. And that's what makes this build really unique, because it is a confessor. But instead, we went with the Sanctifier, and I really enjoy this play style so much. With that said, this is the Purifier. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? Okay, so our intel is 140. Now, we are a Nethari confessor. I didn't place any points into intel. It just naturally went up, and I knew it would. The healing bonus is nice. The crit damage is a plus, but we didn't go with any points in the dex because we wanted to be more tanky. But don't worry, it's fine because I was anticipating that. We allocated a lot more points into strength. We have strength at 105 with the gear in allocation, so that gives our damage bonus a 17.99. We also have a dex of 20, no points allocated except for 5. That gives us a resistance of 300. We put a few points into spirit, gives us a support power of 2020. The reason I put a few points in was for the extra stamina of 156. We also went with a lot more points into constitution for our health to be 8,676. This build is about survivability and being upfront and personal. So that's what we built this around. Okay. We went with our disciplines were domain is fire. We went with convictor. That's going to go ahead and give us armor penetration of +2, fire resistance of +300, prosecute, spread sin to nearby enemies, mortal sin. This is what I really liked about this major discipline, was target debuffs anti-crit strike. Okay, that's what I really love about that. It's really a nice passive debuff against the crits. We also went with Lazar's. That also gives us armor penetration of another +2, plus stamina of +10. Now, we also get the ability Grabthar's Hammer. It's a nice stun effect. I really like that. Plus, we get a barrier that negates fire damage, and we need that on this build because we went a little light with the fire resistance. So anytime we see another confessor, we can go ahead and shield up. With our exploration, we went with Gravedigger. You don't have to go Gravedigger. I just wanted to. I wanted to have a Gravedigger. And I went with Hoarder. And that also gives us another plus stamina, 15. And this also gives us our modifiers towards our harvesting. For our miners, we went with Spreading Flame. This is really kind of important because we get a +2 towards fire damage bonus. And it gives us the ability of Spreading Flames. We went with Reaper. The reason we went with Reaper is the +50 attack power, and we're going to also get a 5%. Well, I'll check it out. It's in the passives. But we get a passive that increases damage, and this is the dot build. So the faster they burn down, the more damage they're actually going to take. Of course, we went with Weapon Finesse. That's a no-brainer with this build. Gives us an additional 50 towards the attack power, and it also greatly reduces power resource costs. Okay, when we are to take a look at the skill point, the talents, let's go ahead and get into that first. We took Absolution. We took Repent for the extra stat bonuses. We took Fever. You're going to need that. That is your main combo. We went with Poise for more stat boosts. We went with Condemnation. We went with the Miner. We went with Conduction. I like this just against Elemental. I'll explain it when we go over the passives. But if you wanted to take Scalding, you could. So that's a preference between these two. We went with flagellation, whatever. Cleansing fire, of course, tools of justice. Sanctifier, blink of faith. I love this. We went with splitting distance, sanctified, and our domain is fire. And the nice bonuses, we get a plus 750 towards health, max mana of 450. We get to wear plate. That's a really good perk for us. We get our fever now has a reduced cooldown and grants us CC immunity. That's important with this build. We wanted that CC immunity. It also increases slashing resistance, crushing resistance, piercing resistance, personal damage modifier, personal healing modifier, and no longer reduces mitigation while channeling. This also damages enemies near you, applying sin to them. Okay, so yes, we have that, and also we have the conviction, which spreads sin, which is the prosecute. I took the prosecute. It's basically because of the prosecute, but we automatically spread sin. Either way, sin's going everywhere. Fire tornadoes now applies the knockdown. And if you didn't want to go with Convictor, you can switch it out. I just like the prosecute and the penetration. Now has increased damage and hits up to 7 targets. Okay, really, really nice there. Okay, as far as bar layout, we went with Blink of Faith, Hellfire Shield, and that turns into Hellfire Blast. Blast those in front of you, dealing 177 damage and leaving them stunned. So we have a CC effect. We have Fire Tornadoes. Went over that. It now has a knockdown. It does 244 fire damage. Okay, now Hellfire Aura also goes ahead and puts an aura around us in a radius of 8 meters that deals 186 damage per second. So that's basically a dot effect, as long as they're within the radius. Okay, big one here is why I went with the race, is the Call of Flames. Increase your damage bonus by fire by 10 for 15 seconds and applies a burning damage over time. Affects up to 5 enemies within 8 meters. That's really important for the Reaper, right? Because we're applying dots. We want them within the radius of the aura. We want to apply the dots. Why? Because the faster they tick down, we go ahead and get that passive for the Angel of Death. We also went with the hammer. Why? Because it has a stun effect. So it goes ahead, smashes enemies, stunning them for 351 damage. We went with Spreading Flames, scorches your target for 248 damage, and spreads any burning damage over time effect to adjacent enemies. Burning causes 122 fire damage every 2 seconds for 16 seconds. Okay, now we have our channel, which is Condemnation. Condemns enemies in front of you, dealing 137 damage repeatedly when you hold it down. You got to channel it. Damage scales as much as 237 damage based on the target's level of sin. That's why we want to go ahead and apply those dots and get that buff to get as much sin stacks as possible. And then, of course, we condemn them and we can heal. This is also applying a healing effect on us. Okay, not much, but a little bit. So that's forewarning, and that's the nice factor going into the intel is the healing bonus of 19%. So that's why I didn't have to allocate any additional points. I could go with that natural leveling intel, knowing I was going to get the healing bonus. Of course, we're going to be a little light on the resistance. I'll go over that in a second. With fire, so we went Sons of Warvrin. That applies a fire damage. That's the only type of damage that we needed to be aware of, and this shield definitely takes that into consideration. Okay, Absolution. These are kind of like, like how we're going to finish them. They're not necessarily, I didn't consider them finishers per se, But definitely if they're low enough, they're surviving, we go ahead, we can use the Absolution and, of course, the Prosecute. So, Absolution absolves an enemy causing 337 fire damage. Absolution damage scales as much to 765 damage based on the amount of sin and consumes the sin in the process. I really, really like this, especially when they're getting low. I go ahead, I hit the Absolution, game over. Same thing with the Prosecute. Convicts an enemy causing 198 fire damage. If the target has sin counters, it applies sin. If the target has sin counters, it applies sin to the enemies within 5 meters of the target. So it actually spreads sin if they don't have sin stacks, right? Is how that works. So when you get grouped up with a healer in a group, this works out really good, especially with your survivability. When we take a look at our resistance, we have a 23 towards slashing, 25 towards crushing, 23 towards piercing, 29 towards fire, which is really nice, but everybody wants to protect against this, and I'll show you guys in the details. Ice 24, electric 24, nature 26, poison 26, disease 26, and bleed 4.8. Okay, now when we go take a look at the details here, you'll see that our penetration for fire is only at 4%. Now, you can get that higher if you were going to go with the other range build. I just didn't like that play style, so I went with this, and the 4 towards the penetration is pretty good. Now, you'll notice that my fire is only at 17, but when I go ahead and apply the buff, now we're going to get a 27.97. Okay, that's why I went with this race, because I knew I wasn't going to stack a lot of attack power, so I got to go ahead and modify that through the buff. Okay, now when we take a look at the defenses, you'll see our armor is 1868. Our barrier is 266. I was trying to go with the barrier build, and I did like it, but you know, the play style was a little different for me. With the resistance, here we go. Now you'll see fires at the besides everything else, fires at 11. So when we go ahead and apply that shield, we'll get that nice extra little boost. You could take fire down in the armor, and I might do that, but I really stack against Templars and Confessors. That was the biggest thing for the ranged. Everything else within this I can self-heal, but I can't heal range very well. That's another reason why I went with the Reaper as well. Or no. Yeah. With the Reaper is just for the simple fact for the dots. So I had to take that into consideration. To bleed, you can get up a little bit more, so I could switch that out for bleed. Final mitigations. Everything looks pretty good here. I'm pretty happy across the board. I try to keep it as even as possible. And like I said, if you wanted to drop fire down a little bit more, you could. I just don't like getting burned from a ranged class like that. So, especially me being a Confessor. Everything else looks pretty good here. And that's why I was really happy with how everything was allocated. Okay, now, let me go ahead and I'll throw up my bar here and I'll show you guys a couple of tricks here. Alright, so, anytime you want to do the combo, if you do this one, you get the stun effect, right? So if you just keep pounding through the 3, you get the stun. We'll wait for the GCD. We get the damage boost here. We get the spread, and then we want to channel. This is also going to give us our healing effect. Anytime we're low on resources, we channel up after the fight and we'll restore. If we're going to go do the knockdown, we're going to hit it twice, follow up with E, and that's going to give us our fire tornadoes. And of course, our ultimate is going to be Immolation. Immolation detonates you with power, blinding up to 5 enemies. You teleport 9 meters away. The one thing I like this as an I gotta get out button for the other builds, but for this build, I kind of wish it was different. I wish a lot of the there are certain you know, disciplines, or I shouldn't say disciplines. That's like archetypes that their ultimate does change, but Confessor isn't one of them. And I kind of wish it would. I wish for the healing build, Immolation would change to something else. For the Sanctifier, it would change to something else and keep Immolation more or less for the Fantic. So, but that's, you know, I'm just saying. Now, I was able to go ahead and solo a few bosses with this build. The only boss I couldn't take out was the King, which is, you know, it's understandable. But everything else looked really good. Now, let's go ahead and go over the passives really quick. Okay, so we went with Conduction over the other one. Increases your attack power and support power by 100 for 30 seconds when damaged by elemental damage. That includes electricity, fire, ice, and nature. Okay, so any type of elemental damage, we're going to go ahead and get that extra buff because our attack power is at 434. That'll bump it up to 534. Cleansing Fire. Reacts whenever damage over time effect is applied to you. That's any dots or bleeds. That's why I wasn't too worried about scaling up bleed that much. There's a chance to trigger Cleansing Fire, which will cleanse all damage over time effects currently applied to you, as well as heal you for 54 for each type of damage over time removed, and gives you a short immunity towards those that are removed. Splitting Distance, increase the base damage of Condemnation by 15%. That's our channel effect, and heals while channeling. So that's why we are really happy with the 19% into the healing bonus. It's not much, but it does hurt. Reduces the cooldown of Meteor Purge and adds a barrier to you. Now, you could go with Meteor Purge if you wanted to, which is a nice ability. Here is Meteor Purge, and I really do like the effect. The question of it is, did I want to go with Conduction? That was a toss-up. So, but here's the thing: is bar placement too. So, if you wanted to go with a Meteor Purge, you could afford to get rid of Sons of the Wolven and put Meteor Purge in there. That's going to be a preference call. So, if you wanted to do that, you very well could. We went with the Mortal Sin. Applies Mortal Sin instead of Sin. Now, this was a big difference. This is why I went with this. Decreasing the enemy's anti-critical strike by 2% per stack. So a lot of people do what? They build crit, right? So I wanted to go ahead and debuff it. And that's basically what this is doing. It's decreasing the enemy's anti-critical strike. It's an anti-critical strike debuff. All right? So really, really important there. Harvesting Desert Winds, increase your out-of-combat health regen. We went with Weapon Finesse. We went over that. Angel of Death. This was the biggest one, especially since we're using dots. Deals 20 more damage to enemies with low health. So the faster they burn down, the more damage they take. And of course, the other passives. Overall, though, I'm really, really happy. Let me go ahead over the gear really quick. Cough. This is all male. Crushing resistance, 43. Damage bonus of 1. Disease resistance, electricity resistance. Healing bonus +1. Healing regen out of combat, 3.1. Plethora of dust, spot weakness. Okay, the book. My book of Archon. Attack power, 31. Crit damage 98. I didn't put any into the crit. Healing amount 96. Remember, we're channeling. Healing chance +4. Critical strike, didn't put it in. Crushing resistance 230. Support power +40. Okay, so that's how we were able to get a little bit more support power. Why? Because we're channeling. Very important stuff here, guys. The chest, damage bonus of +2.5. Fire damage bonus +597. Healing bonus +2.5. Health regen out of combat 3.32. Plethora of dust, spot weakness. The boots, bleed resistance +43. Damage bonus 7.5. Health 7.5. Health regen out of combat 3.11. Ice resistance 43. Plethora, of course, is applied. And then the hands, we went with piercing resistance, and slashing resistance. Very important. Jewelry. We have a strength ring, damage bonus 1.39, power damage bonus, ranged. Even though we're in melee range, the abilities we're using are considered ranged, so we wanted to go ahead and craft a ranged modifier. Okay, so Constitution. So you can go with another strength if you want. That would increase the attack power. I felt comfortable with it, but I wanted a little bit more towards the health. Survivability was very important to me. 2.8 power range, once again 2.19, and our necklace is of strength, attack power 22, critical damage 3.7, even though I didn't allocate any, but it did modify it. But the attack power was the most important thing with the piece. And with that said and done, this is the Purifier. All right, guys, once again, I'm Mystic Raven. This is Mystick's MMOs. As always, have a nice day.